Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. She is one of America's most popular and beloved personalities who has achieved success as an actress, a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and comedian. Suzanne Somers has authored 18 books, including 8 New York Times bestsellers. A dedicated healthcare advocate recognized for her role in bringing information on today's groundbreaking anti-aging medical protocols, preventive care, and long-term health to the public. Suzanne joins us to talk about her newest book, Knockout, interviews with doctors who are curing cancer and how to prevent getting it in the first place. Suzanne, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kathleen. Nice to be here.
You've written a number of self-help books and have had a positive impact on so many lives as a result. Talk to us about why you wrote Knockout.
I wrote Knockout because I was diagnosed with cancer 10 years ago, correctly, and I am cancer-free. But earlier this year, I was misdiagnosed with lung cancer that metastasized throughout my entire body. In fact, my oncologist said, I have never seen so much cancer. And he said, what we can do is we can start you on full-body chemotherapy today. And I looked at him and I said, just so you know where I'm coming from, I'd rather die. I would never take chemical poisoning. It's just not in my nature to do something like that. He said, well, then I think you should think about getting your things in order. And this was reconfirmed over 6 days in the hospital by 6 different doctors, all telling me that it was inoperable, incurable, and essentially hopeless. What I did hold on to, around day 3 or 4, I said to my husband, you know, I've been keeping a file on these doctors who are curing cancer, in most cases without drugs. If I can get out of this hospital, I want you to take me to one of them. So on the 6th day, when it turned out that they were horribly wrong, I was misdiagnosed, it was wrong, I had no cancer at all after looking death in the eye for 6 days, I thought rather than get mad, I'm going to interview these doctors in this file. And that's what I've done for the better part of this year, is talk to these doctors, interview them, and I would say to each of them, it's all well and good for you to tell me this, I need to talk to your patients. They opened up their patients to me. I talked to stage 4 lung cancer, liver cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, brain tumors. All these people living these normal, healthy lives, having not been degraded by harsh chemicals, and I realized there is another way that none of us know about, and so that's what I've written about in Knockout. Other options that you probably don't know anything about.
Now, you interview doctors and medical professionals using everything from alternative to integrative to conventional methods to combat cancer.
Right.
Among them was NewsmaxHealth.com contributor Dr. Blaylock, who you also interviewed for your book Breakthrough. Tell us why you revisited Dr. Blaylock and what insights did you feel that he would offer?
Well, Dr. Blaylock is one of the brightest minds in the country. He's an oncologist, neurosurgeon for 22 years. Stopped surgery because he said he was opening brains, seeing cancer so rare in younger and younger people that he decided he had to devote the rest of his life to research to the effects of chemicals on the human brain and body. So he's a neuroscientist, and I go to him for information all the time. And one of the things that Dr. Blaylock told me that is absolutely shocking, so much so that I've hardly mentioned on television because I'm being so attacked for having the audacity to say that there are ways other than chemotherapy to deal with cancer. But he said, if I were a woman, I would never have a mammogram. And I said, what? He said, if a woman starts at age 40 with no cancer and has a mammogram every year, by the time she's 50, she will have increased her chances of getting breast cancer by 33.33%. He said also, the act of smashing the breast the way we do with, like in a panini machine with a mammogram, he said, if you have a tumor in there, he said, that very process of smashing can break the tumor and metastasize the cancer. He said, I said, well, what do we do if we can't have mammograms? He said, first you have an ultrasound, you have a thermogram, if there's any hot spots, then you have an ultrasound, if there are any shadows, then you have an MRI. I said, well, we can't afford MRIs. He said, if the new gold standard became MRIs, he said, then they would be affordable. He said, because there's no radiation and you see a clearer picture in an MRI. He said, the cumulative effect of radiation from mammograms is actually giving women cancer, and no one wants us to know about that. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Suzanne, trying to understand the complexities of an illness like cancer can be extremely daunting and downright scary for people who are not doctors or medical professionals. What advice would you give patients that can help them to decipher the information that they're being presented with?
Well, I don't give advice, but what's important for me, having been a patient twice, being diagnosed with this horrible disease, is my advantage of having information. If I had been a different kind of patient, Kathleen, when this doctor earlier this year wanted to start me on full body chemotherapy that day, I probably would have taken it. But because I have a lot of information, I was able to stand back and say, first, I know that I have time to think this through, and I'm going to look for other options before I would ever consider that. So information, especially with cancer, because you have to look at the present cancer protocol. We've thrown billions and billions of dollars, maybe trillions at this point, into cancer research, and there's no cure. The death rate has dropped 5% in the last 55 years. That's a failure. After all this money, and they can't come up with anything other than they send attack doctors after me and saying, well, we're making strides and we're extending life. And I go, where are the strides? And what does extending life mean? Extending life means 1 to 4 months maybe of horrible, degraded quality of life. Can they really be proud of that? So my feeling is that perhaps, no one wants to say it's like the emperor's new clothes, but perhaps we've been barking up the wrong tree. Maybe these little guys, these doctors that I've found, who are Western doctors who've broken away from standard of care, who get persecuted, who get ridiculed by their peers because they're daring to do something different, maybe they're onto something, because they certainly can't declare success in the present cancer protocol other than the 3 kinds of cancer that do respond to chemo, which is testicular, childhood leukemia, lymphomas, and non-Hodgkin's.
Now, you did a lot of research for Knockout and conducted many interviews. What did you learn that surprised you the most?
That there are chemosensitivity tests. I never heard of that. They're not given in this country. And I said, why? To this one PhD I interviewed, he said, I'm just the messenger. He said, it's too expensive and it takes too much time. I said, but if you're going to put a body through this rigorous chemotherapy, don't we at least want to know it's the right fit? He said, yes, but you have to understand, you have to get many, many petri dishes, put their blood in all those different petri dishes, and then just try to find the right chemical configuration. He said, they do it in Germany, they do it in Greece. Now, my friend Farrah Fawcett called me a year ago, and she said, do you know anything about German medicine? I said, I do, and I gave her the name of that clinic. She chose on her own to go to Germany to do this. She said, I've had 3 grueling rounds of chemotherapy, 24 weeks of it. I've had 3 grueling rounds of radiation, and she said, for anal cancer, it's grueling. She said, and now my cancer's back with a vengeance. She goes over to Germany. They do a chemosensitivity test on Farrah and find that the chemotherapy she had been given was absolutely ineffective. Now, wouldn't it have been better had we done this before she started on her chemo regimen, to know that it's not going to work, and she could have looked at something else? So if I was going to go standard of care, chemotherapy, radiation, etc., as a patient, I would demand that I have a chemosensitivity test. I think everybody who's undergoing chemo should demand having a chemosensitivity test and have their blood sent off to either Germany or France.
That's definitely important to know. Suzanne, if there is any one thing that you would like readers to take away from your book, Knockout, what would it be?
That at the end of writing Knockout, it took away my fear of cancer. If reading Knockout can do that for all of you who are going to read it, then I would have succeeded, because rather than cowering the corner when you're diagnosed, roll up your sleeves, do your homework, do the reading, look into whatever other people are doing, and then make an informed decision. It makes you more powerful that way. It gives you control over your life, your disease, and your body.
All right, the book is called Knockout, Interviews with Doctors Who Are Curing Cancer and How to Prevent Getting It in the First Place. Suzanne Summers, congratulations on yet another successful book, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.
Sarah Palin's new book, Going Rogue in American Life, will be released on November 17th. You can be among the first to get your copy. Check out our incredible free offer for Sarah's new book. Just go to Newsmax.com and click on the top banner for this great offer. Act today.